Hello there, I'm Rachel. Welcome back to episode 2 of Internet Twister. If at any point you hear my super loud upstairs neighbors clomping around, that's because I have super loud upstairs neighbors that love to clomp around wearing what I can only assume are horseshoes or concrete bricks tied to their feet. So, shout out to them. Let's get started. One thing me and the internet have in common is that we're both never wrong. I swear to God, if these loud neighbors make one more loud thump. Take your fucking shoes off. You don't need them on. You're inside. You're indoors. So today we're going to be doing an internet deep dive on the 1987 Bronx Seals that were trained to be police officers and to hold a gun. These seals like the animal, were trained to hold a gun. And I've just been thinking a lot about them ever since I saw one TikTok about it. So that's what we're going to deep dive on. I've actually done some research ahead of time. I pulled up news articles, but I didn't read them. By research, I mean, I found the news articles, used a website to get into the New York Times without paying, and then haven't read them yet. But all of this is credit here due to Indie Pine on TikTok. I'll link her in the description, and she's the TikTok I saw that made me want to look into this. And my summary is going to be pretty much from her video, and then we're going to dive deeper into the articles separately. In 1985, 3 baby seals washed up on the coast of Maine are taken to the New England Aquarium, and they're named Stanley, Sirius, and Russell. They're all declared non-releasable because they're all anemic seals. So they go live at a small aquarium in the Bronx called the Northwind Undersea Institute, which was run by a man named Michael Sandloffer, who has the most bizarre resume I've ever seen. So let's take a look at that. So first off, we have Vietnam War veteran. He was bedridden for months after being shot. A deep sea diver and Navy SEAL. He led the rescue of Fisty. It's spelled Physty, the whale. In 1981, the first whale successfully rehabilitated by humans. Then he had to hunt to survive after he was stranded in the Amazon off of Colombia for days after a dive. Founded the Northwind Undersea Institute with a folk singer named Richie Havens. Rescued horses from a glue factory to start a hands-on education program for disadvantaged children. All right. With the glue horses, opened a farm and educational animal showcase featuring rescued animals that charged kids little or nothing to attend. He once was dragged down to the ocean floor by a 27-foot sperm whale. How is that? He rescued Fisty the whale, and then he gets dragged down by a sperm whale? Come on, guys. He's trying to help you. Traveled to Belize to retrieve the skeleton of 61-foot finback whale, where he was then asked by the Belizean government to come back and teach diving and conservation techniques to Belizeans. Built a wheelchair-accessible horse-drawn wagon for disabled veterans. Opened the Winham Mountain Ranch, where they had over 100 animals and taught people about the history and nature of the area. He raised 4 black bears and 2 mountain lions. Was featured in a Dewar's white label Scotch ad. Did multiple whale rescues in Newfoundland and off of Baja, California. Baja Blast, what's up? He invented the Baja Blast, that's not true. He released the first captive-born manatee back into the wild, invented and patented a special harness that safely rescues large marine animals, trained the first SEAL, in parentheses, animal team for the military to perform underwater rescues, and then founded the Wolfpack Project to educate people about wolves. So, dude had range. Sometime during those years, Michael had gone to a talk about SEALs being trained to assist in search and rescue missions. So when Michael, that little freak, saw the 3 SEAls that were anemic, he went, you know what? Hell yeah. Men will see things like this and go, hell yeah, instead of going to therapy. In only 8 months, the 3 SEAls were taught to retrieve firearms, bring tools to divers, unbuckle seatbelts, and signal if there were any bodies under the water. No sea lion in the Navy Marine Mammal Program has ever managed to achieve this within the same time frame. That's why they call them Navy SEALs, bitch. Not sea lions. That's not actually why. I'm actually going to look up the Navy Marine Mammal Program. We're going to press pause right here so I can Google deep dive that, because I didn't know that existed. And you think that they would go for seals immediately instead of sea lions if they're the Navy SEALs, but whatever. It says that they train bottlenose dolphins and California sea lions for tasks such as detecting and marking underwater objects like mines, recovering lost equipment, and helping with mine countermeasures. The program emphasizes that the animals are treated well. Okay, well, I wasn't going to doubt that until they're emphasizing it, with some living much longer than their wild counterparts, and notes that the program has also led to over 1,200 scientific publications. The use of marine mammals for military purposes has been the subject of some controversy. Instead of AI fucking overview, let's go to a much more trusted source, Wikipedia. Based in San Diego, that's where I'm moving. I'm going to join the Navy Marine Mammal Program when I move there as a dolphin. I'm not going to join as like a trainer or a Marine or anything. I'm just going to swim a whole lot. Oh my God, they've been deployed for use in combat zones such as the Vietnam War and the Iraq War. So these sea lions and dolphins have been to Nam. They have war flashbacks from Nam. Do you think they were involved in Agent Orange? Do you think the sea lions had anything to do with it? I know the dolphins did. I'm not asking about that. I'm asking about the sea lions. This program has been dogged by controversy. That is such a sentence. I've actually never heard that phrase before, dogged by controversy. This has been due, at least in part, to the secrecy of the program, which was only declassified in the early 1990s. Since the program's inception, there have been ongoing animal welfare concerns, with many opposing the use of marine mammals in military oversights. See, how can they choose? What if the dolphins wanted to be on Vietnam's side? You didn't give them a choice. You didn't ask them. The origins of the program date back to 1960 when a Pacific white-sided dolphin was acquired for hydrodynamic studies to improve torpedo performance. They based torpedoes off of dolphins? That's actually awesome. That's unfortunately awesome. The aim was to determine whether dolphins had a sophisticated drag reduction system, but the technology of the day failed to demonstrate that dolphins have many unusual capabilities in this respect. This research has now resumed with the benefit of modern-day technology, along with the possible drag-reducing mechanisms after studied for human use, skin compliance, biopolymers, and boundary layer heating. Why are we heating within boundary layers on humans? They don't need that. They don't need blubber. Do dolphins have blubber? Do dolphins have blubber? Yeah! Dolphins have a thick layer of blubber under their skin. Blubber, I hardly know her. Okay, so that's sick as hell. I'm not gonna lie. Like, give these dolphins a bomb. Give them a gun. Did they do that? Let's see. Oh my God. What the fuck? They kind of did. When an enemy diver is detected by a dolphin, the dolphin approaches from behind and bumps a device into the back of the enemy's air tank. This device is attached to a buoy, which then explodes, alerting the Navy personnel of the intruder. Sea lions carry a similar device in their mouth, but instead attach it by handcuffing one of the enemy's limbs. This can't be real. Are we sure? This sounds like a video game. This can't be real. Are you fucking kidding me? He handcuffs him? It's like that part in the Sabrina Carpenter concert where she's like, somebody out here is too hot. I'm gonna have to arrest you. But instead it's just like a fucking sea lion going up to a diver and being like, somebody here needs to be arrested. Stupid. We're going to go back to the three little seals, the three little freaks. Love them. The seals started getting a lot of press, and the police, ACAB, all cops are blubbery, began to consider the idea of the SEALs joining the force. Stanley was the top student out of the three and was named, get this, the official SEAL of the Bronx, which is fucking adorable, right? We used to have Whimsy. What happened? What happened? And then they carved a statue in his honor, which that's what I want my tax dollars going towards. a statue of a fucking seal holding a gun. The plan was to apply for more funding to train them in open water, but then around 2.5 to 3 years into their training, both the seals and Michael with the weird resume were betrayed. The seals were suddenly moved to the New York Aquarium because a staff member at the Northwind Undersea Institute was embezzling all the money that was supposed to go towards caring for the seals. I always think embezzling needs to be a more aggressive word for that meaning, because embezzling sounds like bedazzling, and now I'm picturing someone stealing money but really blinged the fuck out. Even their teeth are rhinestoned. They really are. Best believe I'm still bejeweled when I walk in the room. I can still make the whole place shimmer. Taylor Swift, please don't take me to court for that. Anyway, so embezzlement, am I right? They could no longer afford to take care of them after the person did that, and their police SEAL training had to end. Cowabummer, boo, embezzlement, boo, embezzlement. There's 2 things we don't fuck with on this podcast, whaling and embezzlement. And so far we've covered both of those. 2 episodes in. This TikToker that I mentioned in the beginning, Indie Pine, became obsessed with locating where the seals went after that, to the point where she made a map of their location based on the year and would had it laid out, which we will look at in a bit. She just really wanted to know where they all went after the New York Aquarium. And she found out that Russell was actually still alive at the time. This was a few months ago. In 1994, Russell moved to the Chicago Aquarium and then moved to the Maritime Aquarium in Norwalk in 2005, where she lived to the age of 40, accurately predicting Super Bowls over and over. They would give her 2 toys to die for that had each of the team's logo and color on it, and she would die for the one that she thought was going to win, and she was right, over and over. That's nuts. If I had known about this, I would have been placing financial bets on the Super Bowl winner based on what a seal is telling me, because I believe that seal. Mother Nature's trying to tell us sometimes, and we just got to listen to the 40-year-old seal. Nobody wants to listen to the 40-year-old seal. Believe women. Listen to women. Okay? Believe women. Believe the 40-year-old female seals, right? And then she passed a few weeks ago. Probably. Hey, old age, 40-year-old seal, very impressive. Sirius was harder for her to track down, but she did eventually find an article that reported him passing away in 2002, but plot twist, no, she didn't. It was a different seal named Sirius that passed away in 2002. So she thought the police seal, Sirius, the original Sirius, was the father of Mira at the Utah Zoo, but then apparently turns out, no, she wasn't, because Sirius may have been a girl. So it ultimately appears that Sirius passed at the Shed Aquarium in 2003 for undisclosed reasons, and is not a father because she was a girl. Although I think in a way, in a metaphysical way, a girl can be a father. But I also think it should be illegal for people to tell women that they look like their father. I get told I look like my father, and every time I'm like, cool, just say that you think I have a long face. Just say that I have a big nose. Cool. Awesome. Great. Love you. I think people should lie. I think people should say, oh my God, you look like your stunning mother, even if it's a lie. And then when it's a son, they should always tell them, yeah, you look like your dad, or boys, whatever, men. I don't give a fuck. I don't like when people tell me I look like my father, because no, I don't. Why would you tell me I look like a man? Why would you tell me that? You hate me. Anyways, so Stanley, who had a statue made of him, a bronze statue in the Bronx. I don't know if it was bronze. He had a statue made of him. And after he left the Bronx and went to the New York Aquarium, he basically vanished. And she even considered the fact that he could have been renamed, because the president he was named after, Stanley Simon, ended up being corrupt. So maybe they were like, hey, we should give him a different name. But how does the official seal of the Bronx disappear? What did they do with all the Stanley the Steel t-shirts that were definitely still in the gift shop? He had a statue made of him. Where did that go? How do you lose an entire seal and a statue? Not just any seal, but the official seal of the Bronx, TM. How did they do that? So she also found an article about a 10-year-old boy who was a huge fan of the seals, and he like drew them and showed it to him. It was adorable. I guess we used to report about anything in the local news. And that 10-year-old was actually the son of a very famous former New York mobster. So at this point, she's like, maybe Stanley the Seal was under the protection of the mob. Obviously, get that seal a cigar. I would say get him a gun, but he already had one. And then last week, Indy and her friend Joe contacted the Wildlife Conservation Society archives for any record of him, and they did get their answer. They emailed back saying that Stanley had passed at the New York Aquarium in 1991 from a pulmonary edema. How the fuck do you say that? Hold on.
Pulmonary edema.
A condition where excess fluid accumulates in the lungs, making it difficult to breathe. Oh, poor baby. So that solves that mystery, and although it sounds a little tragic, he did get to live a lot longer than he would have in nature. Let us not forget that they were anemic seals, and he left a hell of a legacy with his little statue and being the official seal of the Bronx TM. So let's look at these articles, dive in a little deeper. That was our overview, our summary. Thank you once again to Indy Pine for all that info in her videos, and we're going to dive in deeper now. I think we already dove into the, pun not intended, to the Navy Marine Mammal Program. And I think we're going to look at Stanley Simon now, because dude was corrupt apparently, but that was the SEAL's namesake. He was an American lawyer and politician from New York. He only died in 2023. Interesting. He served as the 10th borough president of the Bronx. Previously, he served for 6 years on New York City Council. In 1987, he was convicted of federal racketeering charges. Sorry, racketeering is one of those words like embezzlement where it sounds way more fun than it actually is. Like racketeering sounds like a new fucking sport. Like when I first heard the words pickleball, I'm like, that's not a real thing. And racketeering is giving the same sort of energy here. He was convicted of federal racketeering charges along with Representative Mario Bugagi and Robert Garcia in connection with the WedTech scandal. Okay, let's find out what that was. In 1987, Simon, aware that he was under investigation and that charges against him were pending, resigned from his post. A few weeks later, Rudolph Giuliani, fuck that guy, announced an indictment against him for extortion, perjury, income tax evasion, and obstruction of justice in connection after an investigation into WedTech, a Bronx-based defense contractor. The charges included extorting a job with pay raises for his brother-in-law, extorting the company. Hello, you can come in.
Boyfriend intermission.
I'm interrupting, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I was just reading about perjury. Obtaining a kickback in exchange for a job at his office and failure to pay income tax on the money he received. The year before, his benefactor Friedman was convicted of extortion and bribery and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. He was convicted of racketeering and extortion in 1988 and received a 5-year sentence. Classic white guys barely serving any time, whatever. We touched on that in the last episode with friggin' Onassis. Dude just paid a fine. He served his sentence at the Allenwood Federal Prison Camp. What's the difference between a prison camp and a prison? Let's look that up next. After 2 years, Judge Constance Baker Motley reduced his sentence, made him eligible for immediate parole, and he left in July 1991. So he only served 2 years. He died on August 27th, 2023 at the age of 93, but his death was not publicly reported until July 2024. Weird. The main difference between prison camps and prison is that prison camps are low-security, work-oriented facilities for non-violent offenders, often with dormitory-style housing and little to no perimeter fencing. This is just a fucking summer camp. Dude just went to summer camp. There's not even a fence. While prisons can be of varying security levels. Yeah, dude. That's crazy. So it's just rich people did bad thing and didn't get fined for one's summer camp, pretty much. Cool. I mean, not cool, but not surprising, I guess. So the first article here, police train seals to help with searches. Stanley, Raz, and Sirius, I guess she has a nickname, Sirius were found abandoned and sick on the coast of Maine last year. Today, the 3 harbor seals are highly skilled at retrieving guns and entering a diving bell to take a breath. Trained to perform as police seals, they have no time for ordinary seal tricks. They're not like other seals, such as balancing red balls on their noses. Why are they stereotyping seals out here? The skills that they are being taught could be a matter of life and death. The 18-month-old trainee seals, Stanley, a male, and Raz and Sirius, females. They said that they were females in this article, but that other girl didn't know that Sirius was a female until later. Interesting. They're about 3.5 feet long. I like how we have a description here as if they're criminals. They're about 3.5 feet long. Their fur is molded black and tan, and they sport long cream-colored whiskers and small flippers. This writer was so clearly trying to like hit a word count for this article. Because why did we need like a when somebody is missing and somebody like draws, what is that called? It's not a mugshot. A sketch artist. That is what it's called. Glad we solved that. Some observers questioned whether the animals would be able to function in the sediment-filled murk of the East River, cluttered at the bottom with cars, old shopping carts, and other obstacles. Why the fuck are there shopping carts at the bottom of the East River? I guess I don't know what's at the bottom of rivers. Maybe I need to question what's at the bottom of the river near me. You know, maybe I should be asking more questions about rivers. A veterinarian said this animal has better vision than you do and is adapted to colder temperatures. He really said, this animal ain't a bitch. Mama didn't raise no bitch. This animal loves cold waters. Just because you can't get around a shopping cart at the bottom of the East River doesn't mean he can't. And then they have a photo of Stanley the seal retrieving a gun. Nice. We have a drawing of when Stanley was deemed the official seal of the Bronx. It's a really adorable drawing. AI could never. Now we have the Bronx Navy SEAL timeline that I believe was made by the same TikToker, Indie Pine. Michael opens the Northwind Undersea Institute in 1981. Stanley and the rest of them are found on the beach, a few days old, and sent to the New England Aquarium in 1985. All 3 seals end up at the Northwind Undersea Institute in the Bronx in 1985. Stanley is named after the Bronx president, Stanley Simon. Russell and Sirius are named by members of the public in 1986. That's so random. Where did they get those names from? Especially if Harry Potter wasn't a thing yet. Where did they get Sirius from? It's spelled the same way. In 1986, they threw a birthday party for Stanley. That's so fucking cute. In 1986, the trio began training to retrieve wrenches and handguns. February 1987, the statue of Stanley is commissioned and lots of Stanley the Steel merch is in the gift shop. I would have fucking bought that. I would have ate that shit up. I love when I go to a zoo or an aquarium and they have a special little animal that they really love showing off. I used to work in an aquarium in high school and we had this albino sea turtle named Nimbus, and he couldn't be released back into the wild because he had really bad vision and stuff, a lot of issues. And there was so much merch about him in the gift shop. There were stuffed animals. There was t-shirts. I ate that shit up. I loved him. He was so emo too. He would just lodge himself on the ground to sleep. And when people would be like, is he okay? Is he stuck? I'd be like, no. He just doesn't want you taking photos of him. He's just kind of a diva and he's not in the mood at the moment. But it was really kind of beautiful because I first saw him when I was in 5th grade and I got a Nimbus the sea turtle t-shirt in 5th grade. I wore that shit all the time, way too much. And then I later worked there and I saw him when he was a teenager and when I was a teenager. And there's something kind of beautiful about that. He did die a few years ago. I miss him. R.I.P. Nimbus. Pour one out tonight. If you're drinking something or eating something right now, throw it on the floor for Nimbus the sea turtle. Thank you. In 1987, June, the New York Times article comes out. That is a website I famously love hypothetically stealing from, allegedly, in Minecraft. December 1987, the Institute's former bookkeeper is discovered to have embezzled 30 to 50K. Jesus, what happened to her? Let's look that up. So once again, this is the New York Times, but this time my hypothetical getting around the ad blocker payment is not working. So I can only see the part that says it's from 1988. The woman, Arlen Siegel, 42 years old, was charged with stealing about $30,000 from the Northwind Undersea Institute between 1986 and ... That's it. And when I look up her name, nothing comes up. But I do have a screenshot of one of the articles. It's just like a part of the article. It says she was active in the Republican Party. Sounds about right. On November 1st, she resigned from the school board in the wake of reports that she had been convicted over the summer of stealing money from another employer. She pleaded guilty and agreed to pay restitution of $12,600. Damn, she's racking it up. Besides the $30K missing from Northwind, another 20 checks are unaccounted for. Bank investigators believe as much as $20K more could have been stolen. At least $4K is believed to have been taken from the Institute's whale rescue fund. Dude, you fucking suck. If you steal from the whales and the seals, fuck you, dude. Michael had said, our classic Michael, had said, I was so naive and gullible, I never thought for one second that anybody could do anything against Northwind. That's so sad. He trusted her. I guess a lot of people did. Sounds like she got money from, multiple sources. For Michael, the loss of the money means delays in projects such as the expansion of the aquarium exhibits. He has also had to hold back on expanding his 13-member staff. He had wanted to hire a grant writer. Besides the money is the integrity of the institution that has been severely damaged, he said. So yeah, Russell was still alive as of May 2025 and is one of the oldest harbor seals ever to be in captivity. So that was pretty recent that she passed, unfortunately. I feel like I need to go back to the WedTech scandal. What the fuck was that?
A few moments later.
I was not expecting it to involve baby carriages. This is giving the same energy as the Chair Company, that Tim Robinson show that's been coming out. It's what do you mean you had an embezzlement scandal that has to do with baby carriages? That's so unsuspecting. I guess that's the point. The WedTech Corporation was founded in the Bronx by John Mariota, who manufactured baby carriages. Years later, Mariota brought in a partner, Fred Neuberger, and began focusing on winning small business set-aside contracts from the Department of Defense. As a major employer in a depressed part of New York City, WedTech enjoyed a strong local reputation and was even praised by then-President Ronald Reagan for the jobs it provided for those who otherwise would be forced onto welfare. Mariota was praised as a Small Business Owner of the Year. WedTech had won many of its defense contracts without competitive bidding under a Small Business Administration program that gave preference to minority-owned companies, despite the fact that Fred Neuberger, not a member of any government-recognized minority, owned a majority of the company's stock. So he was basically committing race fraud, it sounds like, in order to win contracts that were supposed to give preference to minority-owned businesses. Oof. Since he owned the majority, a white person owned the majority, this was supposed to have disqualified WedTech as a minority-owned business. To keep Neuberger's controlling ownership secret, the company committed fraud, forging papers that claimed Mariota was still the primary owner of the company. When WedTech went public, it gave shares of stock to law firms, in parentheses, as payment for legal services. Some of the law firms employed members or relatives of members of the U.S. House of Representatives, including Bronx Congressman Mario Bigagi and Robert Garcia. Both would later resign their seats. Bring that back. Bring back resigning when you're a fucked up person, due to their roles in the scandal, and were subsequently jailed. Bummer. As were state senators Clarence Mitchell III and Michael Bowen Mitchell of Maryland. That's a lot of M's. With undisclosed holdings in WedTech, they used their positions to help WedTech win federal work. Another key figure in the scandal was Paul Casello's first cousin, General Vita Casello. Hello? Who's Paul Casello? That name sounds familiar, but I don't know. Oh, he was in the mob. He was an American crime boss who succeeded Carlos Gambino. Childish Gambino, let's fucking go. As head of the Gambino crime family of New York City. I'm walking here. I'm doing crime here. He ran the organization from 1976 until his murder in 1985. I guess that adds up. Cause of death, multiple gunshot wounds. How did we start with cute seals and we're going into gunshot wounds? That's what I wanted this show to be, actually. He was arrested for the first time when he was 19 for robbing a haberdasher. Bring back haberdashers. Where the fuck are the haberdashers at? Haberdasher, I hardly know her. He refused to identify his two accomplices to the police and served a 3-month prison sentence by refusing to break the oath of omerta. Okay. And cooperate with the authorities. Costello enhanced his reputation for mob loyalty. Fuck yeah. His sister had married one of their cousins. What the fuck? I read that without comprehending it until afterwards. Future mafia boss Carlo Gambino in 1932. So she married their cousin, who was a future mafia boss. This is royal family shit again. This happened in last week's episode as well. And he didn't marry a cousin. Good for him. He married his childhood sweetheart. That's actually fucking adorable. He was in no relation to the actor Richard S. Castellano from The Godfather, despite claims made by Richard's wife. This is like that thing in Secret Lives of Mormon Wives where one of the women kept thinking that she was related to... Who is married to J-Lo? Ben Affleck. She kept saying that she was related to Ben Affleck, and then turns out her husband was like, no, that was a joke. We just have the same last name. We're not related. Kind of a bummer. In a way, I guess the Mormon wives are a mob family of their own. Like, how is Mom Talk going to survive this? And I'm sure they thought that all the time with the mob. They were like, how is Mob Talk going to survive this? Stupid. Mob Talk. I'm gonna start wearing a fedora and like smoking cigars, fat cigars, and talking in a really heavy New York accent and being like, hey, how is Mob Talk gonna... That was not the right accent. How is Mob Talk gonna survive this? What are we gonna do about Mob Talk? Hey, I'm making TikToks here. I'm so sorry. Holy shit. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna be their next hit at this point. Okay, so there's actually a lot going on with this guy. I feel like I don't even have time to unpack all of this. There's so many murders. At one point, 61 of the highest ranking mobsters were arrested, and he was one of them and refused to answer grand jury questions about the meeting. He spent a year in prison on contempt charges. He was sentenced in 5 years in prison for conspiracy to withhold information. It was reversed on an appeal. He identified more as a businessman than a criminal, taking over non-legit businesses and converting them to legitimate enterprises. He used his butcher's training to launch Dial Poultry, a poultry distribution tactic that once supplied 300 butchers in New York City. He used intimidation tactics to force his customers to buy Dial's products. That's so fucking funny. He's like, you know I could kill you, right? Buy this ham. Buy this honey-baked ham or I'll fucking kill you. In 1975, Castanalo allegedly had Vito Borelli, his daughter's boyfriend, murdered because he heard Borelli compared him to Frank Perdue, the owner and commercial spokesman for Perdue Farms. He was like, you better not compare my chicken, my butchering, my poultry to that bitch. I'll fucking kill you. That's so fucking funny. She's like, why did you kill my boyfriend? Okay, it's not funny like that somebody died, but the reason why is like objectively humorous, okay? Yeah, then there's more murder. Somebody died, and then there was somebody who was supposed to succeed him, but then somebody was in prison for tax evasion, and then there was a succession while extortion, robbery, and loan sharking was happening. I guess seals hold guns, but the sharks deal with loans. I don't know how and that was such a dumb joke. I can't even continue the bit. And then there was the Gambino family split into two rival mobs. Okay, like now they're two. This is so fucking crazy. And then Castellano ordered the murder of Gambino associate Nicholas Scaribba, a cocaine and alcohol user. He participated in several public fights and insulted the daughter of George DeSico, but then the guy who, Nicholas, was Salvador Sammy the Bull, Gravino's brother-in-law. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? So he couldn't be murdered because of that? Castellano asked DeSico's brother to first notify Gravino of the impending hit on his brother-in-law, Nicholas, when advised of Nicholas's fate, a furious Gambino initially threatened to kill Castellano first. However, he eventually calmed down and accepted Nicholas' death as punishment earned by his behavior. That's crazy, by the way. What? He was like mad about it at first, and he was like, actually, you know what? You deserve to die. You have had public fights, and you insulted the daughter of some guy who we've never heard of until now. So you actually deserve to die. Yeah. Sorry. He also ordered the murders of... This is stressing me out. I just wanted to talk about seals. He ordered the murders of Gambino Capo James Epilo and his son, James Epilo Jr., because he was infringing on his territory and asked permission to kill him. He's like, can I kill you? He gave him a non-committal answer, but later warned the other guy that guy wanted to kill him. In response, 2 other guys killed them. Cool. So they died anyway? Weird. This is a mess. There's like 7 more murders, I'm not even gonna lie. Castellano allegedly ordered the murder of his former son-in-law, Frank Amato, for physically abusing his wife. All right, yeah. You know what? You shouldn't have abused your wife, aka that guy's daughter. If you married a mob man's daughter, you don't fuck around with that. You don't beat her up, okay? Like, that was insane. According to FBI documents, DeMeo murdered Amato, the former son-in-law, cut up his body, and disposed of the remains at sea. You know what? That sounds like a job for some police seals to find. The following year, Purdue, the alleged cause of the 1975 Borelli murder, remember when that boyfriend was like, you remind me of Frank Purdue, and he was like, fuck you. So that same Purdue approached Castellano for help in thwarting a unionization drive at Purdue facility in Virginia. What? He's just gonna ask for a mobster's help to break up a union? You're kind of the worst for that. Maybe not as bad as the mobster guy, but pretty fucking bad. The 2 men never made a final agreement, though. At the height of his power, Castellano built a lavish 17-room mansion on a ridgeline in Tot Hill in Staten Island. It was designed to resemble the White House in Washington, D.C., had an Olympic-sized swimming pool and an English garden. He engaged in an affair with his live-in Colombian maid, Gloria Alante. He became a recluse and rarely ventured outside the mansion, requiring his capos to visit the residence to give information and receive orders. While he was not entertaining guests, Castellano wore satin and silk dressing gowns and velvet slippers around the house. Okay. He's wearing loungewear. He's lounging in his leisure suit. Silk dressing gowns. Notice how they said gowns. This man was not wearing a PJ set. He was wearing a gown. I'm now picturing one of those ones with the feathers around the edge that like a woman walks down the stairs and like there's a cape behind her and there's like a bunch of the feathers and then the police is at the door and she answers the door and she goes, what do you mean my husband's missing? Was I in the will? No, officer, I would never do anything like that. So that's what I'm picturing here when they say satin dressing gowns. Hey, yo, he was also indicted on racketeering charges. Let's go for racketeering. Also extortion, drug trafficking, prostitution, theft, and the murders of Apillo and DeMolo. He was released on $2 million bail. Why did he get bail? Hey, why did he get bail? Delacroix died of cancer in 1985, starting a chain of events that led to Castellano's murder 2 weeks later. Castellano's failure to attend Delacroix's wake was taken as an insult by members of the Manhattan faction. Then, Castellano named Thomas Bellotti, a loyalist with little diplomatic skill, as the new underboss. Castellano also hinted that he planned to break up John Gotti's crew. Gravano suggested killing both Castellano and Bellotti while they were eating breakfast at a diner. That sounds nice. However, when DeSico tipped Goody off that he would be having a meeting with Castellano and several other mobsters at Manhattan's Sparks Steakhouse. Goody and other conspirators decided to kill him then. So they're just having a sloppy steaks night. They can't stop you from ordering both a steak and a glass of water and then pouring the water all over the steak. Like, they can't stop you from doing that. They'll be like, guys, no sloppy steaks, please. I'll be like, no. Like, we're not going to do sloppy steaks. And then as soon as the waiter leaves, we go, slop them up. And we pour the water all over. That's what I imagine was happening when the mobsters met at Manhattan Sparks Steakhouse for Castellano's murder. Okay, they were having sloppy steaks with the Dangerous Knights crew. If you've never seen I Think You Should Leave, you're really going to be confused by that entire monologue I just pulled out right then, memorized. Bellotti drove Castellano to a prearranged early evening meeting at Sparks Steakhouse for some sloppy steaks. A hit team waited near the restaurant entrance. Positioned down the street were backup shooters. Goody and Gravano observed the scene from a car across the street. As Castellano was exiting the car in front of the restaurant, a gunman ran up and shot him several times with handguns and revolvers. Sorry, that's not funny. It's just the fact that he had both was like quite an image in my head. Allegedly, Carnegala delivered the fatal shot to Castellano's head. Bellotti was shot as he exited from the driver's door before leaving the murder scene. They refused to grant him a Catholic funeral, citing his notorious life and death as the reason. All right, fair. That feeling when you're Catholic. 2 weeks after the murder, Goody was elected as the new boss of the Gambino family. Vincent Gigante, the boss of the Genovese family, was outraged that Goody had killed Castellano without a hit, without following mafia protocol, and solicited the help of Lucci's family boss in carrying out a hit. So there seems to be a lot of media portrayals of this dude, which I was wondering that. I was like, is there not a movie about this guy's life? Sam Coppola portrayed him in a 2001 Canadian-American TV movie, The Big Heist. Coppola name noted. I don't even care to look up if that's a Coppola or just a different Coppola, because that was just a lot. That was a lot to be looking at, honestly. Sorry you guys had to unpack that with me. I really was not expecting that when I was like, why does that name sound familiar? Like 20 minutes ago when I clicked on that, I just thought I don't even know why it sounded familiar. Still, to this day, I hadn't heard any of that before. Sorry, fucking the WedTech scandal. That's what we were talking about, dude. Holy shit. That was really a spiral we went on together. Now we're back on WedTech. By the final years of Reagan's second term, WedTech's crimes had become too numerous to hide. An independent counsel was appointed by Congress, which charged Attorney General Edwin Meese with complicity in the scandal. In parentheses, his close friend had worked as a lobbyist for the company and sought help from Reese on WedTech contract matters. While Meese was never convicted of any wrongdoing, he resigned in 1988 when the independent counsel delivered the report on WedTech. The word meese is what I imagine the plural of moose should be. So, goose, geese, moose, meese. Moose are like really freakishly tall too. They can be 6.9 feet. Moose. A moose can be 6.9 feet. 1, is he single? 2, that's stupid. Sorry, that was stupid. 2, what the fuck? What the fuck? A moose is just gonna be looming over me? What is that? We don't have those here, okay? And I'm really glad that I've never encountered a moose, because that sounds really fucking terrifying, and I just don't want to do that. I don't want to be involved in that at all. I think Canadians are very brave. I believe that's where moose are. Should I fact check that? Let's do it. Moose live in cold climates. Well, yeah, no fucking duh. Across the northern hemisphere, including North America, Europe, and Asia. In North America, they are found throughout Alaska, Canada, and the northeastern United States, as far south as the Rocky Mountains and states like Colorado. Definitely none near North Carolina at all. I am marked safe from being near a 6-foot moose. You know those little Facebook events where it's like marked safe from this tropical storm? Count me as marked very safe from being near any sort of 6'9" moose. Thank you. Dude, fucking WedTech, it was just a fraud that a lot of Not just fraud. Sorry. I just like, after reading about the mobster stuff, it just really sounds like borderline nothing at that point compared to all that stuff, all that murder. Basically just a lot of fraud that a lot of US representatives of varying kinds were involved in somehow. I feel like I want to go back to the Navy Marine Mammal Program, but I'm going to finish reading the newspaper articles first because we had more to go through, I think. Yeah, Stanley the Steel. It's actually crazy to me that I say Stanley the Steel at least twice in this episode, and I notice it 0 times. Immortalized in stone, and then they have a photo of him being surrounded by people saying Stanley the Seal gets admiring glances. Less than 2 years ago, while he was still a pup, Stanley the Seal was rescued from certain death on the Maine coast and brought to the North Undersea Institute on City Island. Since then, Stanley has become quite the draw at the Institute's museum. He's been more than earning to keep by undergoing training to help human divers in the underwater search and rescue operations. It's no surprise then that Stanley has become an eminent symbol of the world of marine animals, that a statue was carved in his likeness. This Sunday, the statue of Stanley, let's fucking go, will be unveiled with all the appropriate pomp and circumstance that can be mustered. What a sentence. All the appropriate pomp and circumstance that can be mustered. Awesome. At Northwind on City Island Avenue. I'll be showing the fuck up. All right, RSVP if you're showing the fuck up for Stanley the Steel's monument statue. Stanley the Steel again. At Northwind on City Island Avenue. Show the fuck up. Pour one out. Who's bringing the keg? The statue of Stanley is the work of Canadian artist Alex Stick. I bet that guy has seen a moose. Who carved the 400-pound life-size statue from a 1,600-pound block of soapstone in his studio in Richmond, British Columbia. You could only afford a studio back in 1986 when they were like $5 to get a 2-bedroom. That's kind of crazy. I guess he's an artist, you know. Wait, I'm so fucking dumb. It was an art studio. It was definitely an art studio, not like a apartment studio. Fucking idiot. Last year, the director, our man Michael, was at a conference on sea mammal training. While there, he saw some of Stick's work at a local art gallery and found himself entranced. A meeting was arranged with the artist and the sculpture was officially commissioned. The official ceremony will start on Sunday at 2 p.m. On hand to formally introduce the artwork to the world will be the former Canadian ambassador to Iran, who was a hero during the U.S. hostage crisis there and was awarded a Congressional Gold Medal for his efforts. So he experienced that and then came home only to be the spokesperson for a seal statue. Not a statue in his honor, a seal statue. We're back on the timeline now. Jesus, I almost forgot about that. There was embezzlement. And then in 1989, the Institute receives $10K of grant money from the New York State Council. However, by now, the seals would have reached sexual maturity and we need separate tanks, which the Institute did not seem to have the funds for after the embezzlement. That's why they got sent away. Okay. In 1990, the seals are no longer mentioned as being at the Institute, and then mentioned in the 1991 New York Zoological Report as being obtained by the New York Aquarium, as Northwind was unable to continue their care. 1990 through Rassel moves, sorry, I forgot she had a nickname, Raz, moves from New York Aquarium to Shedd Aquarium. At some point, Sirius moves from New York Aquarium to New Jersey State Aquarium. In 2002, Sirius possibly dies from the West Nile virus, the first marine animal in captivity to have ever passed from the virus. Sorry, how was that not mentioned earlier? That's kind of wild lore. Like, why did you get the virus? You're a seal. Okay. You're a seal in New Jersey. How'd you get the West Nile virus? Okay. 2005, that's the last update we have basically. Raz moves to the Norwalk Maritime Aquarium, which we know. And then in 2025, Raz celebrates turning 40. Whoop, whoop. Who's pulling up to the party? Who's pulling up to the seal party? I'm going to insert a photo of her with her cake because it's really fucking adorable. It's like not a real cake, an ice cake where they cut it out to be the numbers 40 and they dyed it a fun color. Really cute. Let's pull up the article that I hypothetically ripped from the New York Times, allegedly. Welcome to the undersea world of the Bronx. That's what the man said, and the people went inside, a few of them half expecting to see aquariums filled with rusty oil drums, assorted garbage, and muggers wearing snorkels, masks, and swim fins. Okay, bullying the Bronx immediately, crazy first sentence. Instead, they saw blackfish, blue crabs, rock weeds, and rock crabs, starfish and toadfish, killies and porgies. The Northwind Institute is full of surprises. In places like Fort Lauderdale and San Diego, seals are trained to juggle beach balls on their noses or to play the national anthem on a row of bicycle horns. Sorry, what? What kind of seals can play the national anthem on a row of bicycle horns? Like the one by Lana Del Rey? Or stupid joke. Here in the Bronx, 3 harbor seals are being trained to retrieve 38 caliber revolvers thrown into water tanks. How often would they possibly be throwing revolvers into water tanks? Like in the wild? Why would they need like open water training for that? In return, their trainer gives them fresh herring. It's one of those herring for guns deals. I did not make that up. That's in the article. It's one of those herring for guns deals. Dude was having a great time writing this one. Watching the seals flap about, it didn't look like they'd ever be able to halt a holdup or issue a parking ticket. This dude said cops are only for holdups and parking tickets. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. But Mr. Sandloffer says he thinks that they can be trained to retrieve handguns tossed into New York waters, as well as drugs and other contraband. He said this SEAL search and recovery team can be taught to take underwater photographs for bridge inspection and other purposes. How the fuck is a SEAL gonna run a camera? They can't use a camera. They can't take photos. What the fuck are you talking about? They're SEALs. And to find submerged bodies, which can impede the navigation of New York pleasure boaters. Yeah, you know, I always am boating for pleasure in New York, and then I keep running into bodies. Miss Ross wasn't too sure at first that she wanted to come to the Bronx to train SEALs, giving up her job in San Diego, where she trained sea lions for the Navy. Nobody told me that was a career option, right? Nobody told me that I could have gotten a job training various marine life for various things, where she trained sea lions for the Navy to play anchors away on bicycle horns, perhaps. She can't talk about it. This dude was having so much fun writing this article. That's so funny. I actually really like this guy. I don't know who he is, but he had a little bit of whimsy while writing this. Michael told her people come here from all over the world now to see the work we're doing with the seals and the rescue equipment for beach whales. They all ask if it's safe to come here. The leader of the Japanese delegation said, "The Bronx? People get killed there, don't they? Was the Bronx really that bad?" Well, I did just read a bunch about the mob, but that was in Manhattan, actually. Michael has proclaimed the official seal of the Bronx to be Stanley, who was named after the former borough president Stanley Simon. He said that no, he was not contemplating a name change with the indictment this month of Mr. Simon in the WedTech scandal, not with all those Stanley the Seal t-shirts in the gift shop. I love this guy. I love this author. Stanley is a 2-year-old harbor seal who retrieves the handguns to the delight of the school children who visit the museum in groups almost every day. Yeah, I'd be delighted by a seal holding a gun too. I was going to say if I was a kid, but I would be delighted right now. Stanley also demonstrated one of his new tricks yesterday, something more macabre. How do you say that? Macabre? I feel like that's wrong.
Macabre.
I'm a dumbass. I didn't know that was... I've heard that word before, but I didn't know it was spelled like that. That's a crazy spelling. It's spelled like macabre. Something more macabre, which is unbuckling seatbelts on submerged humans. Michael said the 3 seals would begin training in open waters in September. They were brought in as stranded pups, and a portion of the institute was dubbed the Rescuarium, where children now bring in sand sharks, injured seagulls, and much to Michael's consternation, stray dogs and cats. Why are you bringing a dog or a cat to the aquarium? Holy shit, was this writer hitting on Michael? Visitors see the strapping, bearded Mr. Sandloffer as something of an exhibit himself. The son of a ship riveter from Sheepshead Bay section of Brooklyn, the seaman is known to some as the man who rode the whale. He nursed a giant sperm whale back to health by hand feeding it and rode on its back as it returned to sea. Sorry, what? I know he rescued a whale. I didn't know he fucking pulled a Jonah from the Bible. Is that the one who got swallowed by the whale? I think it is. And just rode on its back. Let's fact check that. Yeah, Prophet Jonah was swallowed by a great fish in the Bible. I was right. Okay. He rode a whale. Interesting. Also, this person said he was strapping bearded at something of an exhibit himself and then called him a seaman. So I really think that this author was kind of hitting on him. He travels the world to free whales from stranding and from fishing nets and to preach marine ecology. One of the school children who visited the Institute this week was perfectly prepared to accept all of these tales. What he could not believe was that he was still in the Bronx. Why does this man keep bad-mouthing the Bronx so hard? Jesus. That school child did not say that. We've got another article about the statue. Stanley the harbor seal is real and alive and as busy these days as the streets of New York City, where he lives learning a new trade as a kind of police dog of the sea. You may have seen his picture in the papers not that long ago fetching a pipe wrench for a diver. Stanley the soapstone seal. Holy shit, tongue twister. Stanley, the soapstone seal, is just coming alive, soon to view the world through obsidian eyes from the bench in a Richmond workshop of sculptor Alice Stick. You may have seen Stick's work before in the windows of the Marion Scott Gallery on Howe Street. His is the polar bear with fur carved in stone, yet seeming soft enough to stroke, or the sea otter, perky and defiant, with a fat crayfish in his paws. These descriptions are really vibrant. The works carry no price tags, but Scott says they bring in from $7,000 to $10,000 each and are usually sold within a few days of being put on display. This seal statue was unpaid commission, and the artist said, "I figured it's pretty easy, just a cigar with a head on it, but it hasn't been that easy. It's taken me just as long as usual." Describing a seal as a cigar with a head on it is like really funny, actually. Love that. He has a 877 kilo block of soapstone and carves it with a bread and butter knife. He also uses chisels and X-Acto knives. Then we have an article about the Bronx Institute facing tax debts because of the embezzlement. The Institute problems were publicized this week when its former bookkeeper, Arlen, I can't read her last name, but at one point we said it. At one point, we looked her up on Google. 42 of Wallface Avenue in the Bronx was charged with grand larceny and forgery. She was accused of taking $30,000 from Northwind. She has pleaded innocent and is free without bail. How does this happen in such a small place? Asked Michael. Sandloafer is known for, then they list everything he does. He's so cool. He rides whales. The Institute's budget grew from $10,000 a year in 1981 to $400,000 a year in 1988. Crazy. It became clear something was wrong in 1987 when an Institute staff member had to get a life-saving spleen operation. Just upon entering the hospital, my insurance was canceled because payments weren't made by the bookkeeper. Oh my God. A hastily sent check from Michael renewed the insurance, but still Ginkgo was faced with a worry in the hospital that the insurance could be canceled again, and the operation was $35,000. I think it was just assumed by everyone at the time that it was just careless and an accident. Nobody assumed she was taking anything. She admitted to stealing $9,000 back in January and paid back the money. Why was she still working there after that? The staff continues to look for missing checks. It appeared more and more money was missing. Then we have the article about the 10-year-old boy who was involved with the famous mobster. Not the one we read the entire Wikipedia article on, of course, because that would make too much fucking sense. It's a different mobster. A different famous mobster. Canvases by the 10-year-old Hartsdale artist who has been sketching and painting since he was a little kid. Sorry, you're 10? What is a little kid for you? That man's an old soul and the son of a mobster. He captures sea life and seascapes he encountered at the Northwind Museum. The youngster, Vincent James Bondi Jr., a fourth grader, has a one-boy month-long art exhibit. Jesus, he already has an art exhibit? The soft-spoken boy explained, "When I was a little kid, I started to draw stuff, then I went to art school." The talented youngster started off as a doodling toddler and soon was drawing original cartoon characters and sketches of familiar surroundings like his backyard clubhouse. Since kindergarten, he has been taking once a week 90-minute lessons at AB Artist Supplies in Hartsdale. That's adorable. I'll put that photo in. It's actually a really good drawing of a seal, I'm not even gonna lie. Should I look him up? What's up with his family? From 1971 to 1983, Bondi, this is the little boy's dad, by the way. I hope that little boy didn't end up in the mob and didn't end up becoming an artist. Like, I really hope that for him because he sounded really sweet. Anyway, his dad was convicted of various crimes, including petite larceny, criminal possession of a stolen credit card, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, promoting gambling, possession of gambling records. Then he pled guilty to the gambling stuff. 2012, he swung a fork at Gennaro Almo, owner of Patricia's Restaurant in the Bronx. He then whacked him in the head with a metal chair and finally tossed glass dinner plates at him. Bondi was assisted by John DiNardo, who hit Almo in the face, shoved him to the floor. Both men were arrested and face assault charges. According to Bondi, he met Donato in jail. They were cellmates and have been together ever since. They became friends in jail. When Donato was released, he contacted Bondi for a job and was hired. Bondi testified that Donato was like his right-hand man. When Bondi applied to BIC for a wholesale license in 2009, he admitted that a former partner in a loan sharking business once told borrowers, if you don't pay, Benny Bondit will put a bullet in your chin. Bondi said, I'm a legitimate guy. I pay my taxes. I'm going to keep doing what I do, but they won't let me. He's like, I pay my taxes. Let me do my shit, okay? I really want to know what happened to the son. Guys, do you think he kept drawing sea animals? Because it would be really sad if not. I guess I'll never know. But I guess if he had become part of the mob and had some crazy story like that, I would be seeing an article about it. The son, I mean. I just got way too invested in whether or not this soft-spoken little artist boy got drawn into his dad's involvement in the mob. But I guess not, because I haven't seen any articles when I keep looking up his name, which is the same name as his dad's, except he's Junior, obviously. I feel like that's it. I feel like we just unpacked a lot. My search history is just gonna look so weird. I had to bang on my ceiling with a broomstick at one point. Feeling kind of drained after reading about the dolphins with their bombs and the sea lions with their handcuffs and the seals with their guns. Oh my. If you liked this episode, maybe subscribe if you feel like it. I don't know. If you didn't like it and if you don't like me, never leave me a mean comment ever, or I'll send you a photo of me crying and or your address depending on what mood I'm in. I hope you enjoyed episode 2. We really did quite the jump from Jackie Onassis to seals holding guns. But I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad about that jump, that leap. All right, bye.